Hey guys, it's Friday. Welcome. We're going to talk today about the problem with California weed and if we can fix aging. Okay, so I have a theory that I think most people will probably disagree with. And it goes something like, I think most policies are probably good policies. Almost every policy makes sense on paper, even polar opposite policies. The problem is every time a policy, especially big ones and especially very politically heated ones, get enacted, there's a lot of pushback at the same time it's trying to go forward. So there's always this kind of pulling away instead of letting it do its thing. And what that does is it makes every single policy not quite do what it says it can do on paper. I think a policy needs two things. It needs to, one, work really well on paper, and it needs to really work really well when you put your all into it, but it also needs to work well when there's a compromised version of it. There needs to be both at the same time. And the same goes for when states legalize marijuana, and there needs to be a version where it doesn't just fall and crumple from the inside if it's not fully being done the way it's supposed to be done. And we're gonna look at California as an example of this because Vice just put out a pretty interesting video that shows while the legalized market in California is doing super well monetarily, the amount of taxes and the amount of red tape that it's causing is creating a huge opportunity for the black market to do just as well and fill in those gaps, and the gaps are getting larger and larger and larger every single year. So the video kind of starts out with a reporter following some police as they raid an illicit weed farm. They explain that no matter the size of the farm, it's still going to be a misdemeanor.
If you're tending to the grow, you're looking at a citation. It's a misdemeanor, but you maybe get a $500 fine for it. 500 plants, you have 1,000 plants, you have 1,000,000 plants, it's still a misdemeanor.
So you feel like legalization with those drop penalties has emboldened the black market growers to just go buck wild?
Yes, there's no threat of penalty. These are just perfect areas and locations to set these up.
So right off the bat, you're creating plenty of incentive or lack of punishment for people to do things where they just put that into the budget. $500 is the fine. They make way more than that, so it's really nothing. I've heard black market stories, and this is just obviously anecdotal, so don't take this for anything else except for that, but I've heard stories of a pound of weed being sold for $100, and that's just basically because they want it out. They needed to get away because there's more weed coming in, but obviously that's an insanely cheap pound there that you're getting, and it's probably fine weed. It's just a little bit older. Anyway, the video goes on to say that basically the legal market in California is becoming the tourist market, and then anybody who knows what they're talking about goes then to the illegal market because they're getting better product, they're getting cheaper product, and they're creating relationships with people who have been in the business for decades, as opposed to these entrepreneurs who are coming in and seeing weed as the next big thing. They then go to actual cannabis businesses in California and they talk to them and see if they're actually making any money. That's a really interesting little clip of the video.
How profitable in reality is it to run a legal cannabis business in California right now?
It's not profitable at all. The store we're standing in right now is still in the red. It's losing money.
That's crazy. You're losing money running a legal cannabis store.
Yes. The only way we're able to survive is we're running a really low corporate overhead, and we have a few stores that are profitable, right? Some make a tiny bit, some make a little bit more, but when you're in expansion mode, it's not really anything that's significant. With all the taxes and the regulations, it's very hard to squeeze out any profit, and there's really no large amounts of money to be made in the industry right now.
So while we have these huge numbers to tout in California, they're making over $1 billion a year in tax revenue, I almost want to get away from that way of thinking about marijuana because it's not showing the full picture. It's showing that small businesses are having even a harder and harder time getting up and running or sustaining their business because of the amount of regulations and the amount of difficulty getting licenses and all of these things that California has been super hard ass about. And because of that, all of these numbers are coming from the huge businesses that really are doing a much lower risk thing, as opposed to somebody who's starting a new weed business and is putting their life savings into that. That's becoming less and less a reality in a place like California, which is supposed to be one of the bigger marijuana hubs of the country. It's now becoming one of the bigger big business hubs of the country. And that's a problem. This is a good video. I'm going to put it in the description. You can check out the full thing. Let's move on. Next story, kind of interesting. A study came out that showed cannabinoid, the one kind of ugly stepchild or stepsister or sister or brother of THC in marijuana, has an effect on the brain, especially the neural cells of the brain. It reduces oxidation, is what the study says, which is something that inhibits Alzheimer's or even Parkinson's disease. So this is a tricky thing for me to describe because really, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just read this article. But basically, there are mitochondrial parts of the cell, and over time, when they get oxidated, they become like donuts, and that's bad. And so we don't want donut mitochondria. And what cannabinoid does is it keeps them straight and it keeps them functioning. Which means that if you were to take, say, a supplement, say a cannabinoid supplement or a pill or some kind of daily regimen of cannabinoid that, by the way, does not have any psychoactive abilities, it's different than THC. If you take just that on its own, isolated, it will keep your mitochondria of your neural cells nice and happy, and you don't have to worry about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. One thing I want to re-emphasize is I don't know what I'm talking about, and also when you look at these studies, they're always taking one part of something out of its context, and that's a problem. So they're studying what cannabinoid can do to the neural cells. They're not studying what the other terpenes can do, what THC does, what CBD does. And so all of those in effect with each other probably do something entirely different. So this isn't saying that marijuana stops your brain from aging or marijuana cures Alzheimer's. It says one tiny, tiny little part that may mean something entirely different when put back into the whole. So that's the disclaimer, and that's a huge disclaimer, and that's pretty much the biggest disclaimer for any study that you read on the internet. Now that aside, kind of cool. And that's it for today. It's Friday, so we have some music that came out today. Nothing great, honestly. The new Pine Grove album, which I've kind of stopped listening to them. I feel like their music is a little bit boring. Anais Mitchell released an album. This is her first album since Hadestown, which is a really, really long time ago, and it's nowhere near the heights of that album. So this one's fine, it's good, but it's not gonna get you that same like rush as Hadestown, which I do recommend. That's a really good album. And that's it. We'll be back next week with some more stories. I'll see you then.